Have you ever heard the term Souls-like game? I bet you have. Basically, it includes the series of the Dark Souls games, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and now Black Myth Wukong. To some, it means third-person action game. To some, it means it was made by FromSoft. But to most, it means hard as shit. Like, these games are literally known to just be as hard as possible. Most games you can expect to die a few times throughout the experience. In these games, dying is part of the experience and you can expect to experience it hundreds of times. In fact, you're going to spend most of your time dying. Most games have difficulty settings and they want you to enjoy the experience. They don't want you to die too often, as that can lead to frustration, which can make you dislike them, and as a result it can affect the game's score and its sales. I mean, that makes sense, right? We play games to have fun, so they try to make the game as fun as possible. Losing equals frustration. So why would games that are known for punishing their players so brutally reap so many rewards? Dark Souls 1 would have the player fight a boss, and then if the player lost the fight, which they did a lot, each subsequent time they lost, they would have to travel a long way down the same path, encounter the same enemies just to have another shot. And if they lost again to that boss, rinse and repeat. That sounds like a design flaw, surely, right? Well, look at this. 89 on Metacritic. Elden Ring is an open world version of this same formula. Some people had meltdowns over this, crying out for a difficulty setting. Devs of Ubisoft shouted from the Twitter mountaintops how the game had bad UI since it offered no help to the player. Everybody asked FromSoft to change their ways, but the gods of Elden Ring came to their critics and whispered, "Get good." Black Myth Wukong copied the formula, nominated for Game of the Year. Kingdom Come Deliverance actually had a similar setup and they sold over 8 million copies. Baldur's Gate 3 was known to be difficult and that won Game of the Year in 23. So what about those games that are easier, that give the player a difficulty setting, that make everything more simplistic? They explain where to go, what to do. How did those games do? Ouch. But why? Why would people want the stress of playing these difficult games? Why do they seek pain and suffering? Well, in this video, I shall explain why, and it's a great lesson for life in general. In fact, this is my version of a motivational video, I guess. So if I end up releasing some self-help courses or end up selling cryptocurrency, please make sure to slap me and get me back on track, as that seems to be the pattern when someone offers self-help. So let's get into it and let me explain how gaming teaches patience and perseverance. Quick side note, thank you again for all your support as always. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. That is my personal advice as a newly proclaimed motivational speaker. Anyway, back to reality. So, I want to briefly discuss the story behind Dark Souls and how it came to be successful. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the visionary behind the Dark Souls series, faced significant challenges during the game's development and its publication. The first game he helped with was Demon's Souls. This game was considered a failure within the studio of From Software. The project, which began around 2006, struggled with a lack of coherent vision and compelling gameplay. Miyazaki, who joined FromSoft in 2004, saw an opportunity in this troubled project. He believed that if he took over, he could steer it in a new direction without significant risk, as the game was already deemed unsuccessful. Under his leadership, the game underwent a massive overhaul, including shifting from first-person to a third-person perspective to enhance environmental appreciation and the combat mechanics. Despite these internal challenges, external skepticism also posed hurdles. Shuhei Yoshida, then president of Sony's game division, played an early build demo of Demon's Souls and he deemed it poor, citing performance issues and lackluster gameplay. He said, "This is a terrible game." Consequently, Sony chose not to publish the game in Western markets. This decision led to other publishers such as Atlus or Bandai Namco stepping in to distribute the game in North America and Europe respectively. Miyazaki's innovative design choices, including the game's high difficulty and unique online features, were initially met with resistance. However, his determination to create a challenging and rewarding experience eventually resonated with the players, leading to the game's cult-like following and critical acclaim. This success paved the way for future titles, including Dark Souls 1 through 3, and of course 2020's Game of the Year, Elden Ring. So if he'd listened to feedback from literally anyone except himself, this game would never have come out the way it did. Now we have so many Souls-like games on the market, and it's potentially the most popular form of video game nowadays. If Miyazaki had veered even an inch away from his vision, this would never have been possible. No matter how many people said, change it, it's no good, no matter how many companies refused to publish it, no matter how many people criticized, he stood true to his vision. He got knocked down so many times, but he kept getting back up. And then, he achieved more than he ever could have dreamed of. He didn't just make a successful game, he made the successful game. So, back to the biggest criticism, its difficulty. I'm going to tell you a story from my experience. Oh, and if you guys have time, please leave a comment with your version of this story, as we all have one. Anyway, I started playing Dark Souls 3, and in the first few minutes you would meet a boss battle. Ludex Gundyr was his name. Now, when I first met this boss, I tried to beat him, but I lost quickly. He was bigger than me, he could take about 1,000 hits of damage, and I could barely take a handful. He dealt more damage than me, he had a bigger health bar. It was an unfair fight. I died, and then the game spat me back outside his arena. I couldn't level up, I couldn't get better gear, I couldn't ask a friend online for help. The game wouldn't give me access to any of that. The game looked at me and said, you ain't even playing this game until you beat this guy. I thought, but I can't. I didn't even come close to beating him. I went back and then lost again, then again, then again. I went back in and I lost again, then again, and then again. I was so frustrated I considered returning the game, declaring it as unfair. One more time I thought. I went back in and I lost again, but I managed to get more health off of him than the previous times. I had also managed to learn some of his patterns, and I dodged a couple of times when he tried to hit me successfully. And I thought, what if I could learn all his moves and dodge them all? If I then landed hits on him when I could, eventually I would win, right? And so it began. Me going in, learning more, dying and then returning. This pattern went on and on. I kept coming back, studying, practicing. He should win this fight. The odds were stacked in his favour, but the underdog was learning. I kept going back and dodging and rolling and hitting, and then BAM! He dropped. I had won. I jumped up on the couch and screamed with happiness. I think I had tears coming out of my eyes. What had seemed hopeless or impossible had just been done. And I had done it. Not an online friend, not a special weapon, a cheat code, not a level up stats. It had been me. I was the one who improved, not the character. It was me who had beaten the odds. It was at this moment I truly understood why these games were so tough and yet so revered. It was about overcoming almost impossible odds. It was about refusing to take the loss. It was about never giving up. Patience and perseverance. I learned that at that point, and then since that moment it changed my perception of these type of games forever. It's something called the payoff. I talk about it in other games like Kingdom Come Deliverance, but what these type of games have is something called the payoff. So if you beat a level on a game in one try and it's easy, what is the payoff? Well, basically zero. If it's a little challenging, you get a little bit more of a payoff, and so the pattern goes. These games teach you how to be patient, learn enemy attacks, take your time, and that you can overcome any obstacle no matter how daunting. All it takes is practice, patience, and perseverance. Tell me, isn't that applicable to most things in life? It happened with me on YouTube. My first video got 7 views. 6 were from myself and 1 was from my dad, and he hates video games. The second did the same, and the third video the same. But I kept coming back, I kept making videos, I studied it, I practiced it. I applied the advice I had learned from games like Dark Souls and I put it into practice. Now, I'm far from the finished article and I have a long way to go, but I didn't give up. Neither did Miyazaki, and neither should anyone, as it is only with great struggle that we can experience the best that life has to offer. In order to experience those highs, you have to overcome the many obstacles on the way. Just to explain the story of Dark Souls 1, the player character, you are what they call a hollow. The hollow in Dark Souls represent the state of losing one's humanity and purpose. As undead, characters are cursed to resurrect after death, but each death chips away at their will and sense of self. When an undead loses all their hope or purpose, they hollow, becoming a mindless shell. Hollowness is not just a physical state, but a metaphor for despair, futility, and the loss of identity. So when you play as a hollowed, other people you meet on the journey will say, "Don't you go hollow." And what they mean is, don't you give up on this game. Don't you surrender. Keep getting up and don't lose hope. Keep trying and eventually you will win. Throughout the game, you see many dead bodies of those who did go hollow. You can think of these as all the other players who have given up throughout the game. I saw one right after that boss that I managed to beat. I saw it and said out loud, "I feel you, buddy." Now, just to touch on the patience aspect, when you play these Souls-like games, there's always a dodge button. Now, in most games prior to these games, you could essentially mash this button over and over and you'd never get hit. It wasn't strategic, it was more just about hitting the button. The Souls-like games changed this formula. You had to wait and dodge exactly when the timing was right. If you spammed it, you would run out of stamina and then you'd be unable to dodge at all, and thus you'd get punished. If you dodged too early or too late, you got punished. So the game forced you to be patient, study the enemy's moves and move at exactly the right time. It made you channel your inner monk. And when you play like that, especially if you've played Black Myth Wukong, you feel so at peace compared to the enemy. You feel in control. This is another lesson that we can take to real life. You can rush things. You can hit that dodge button a lot, but you're gonna burn out. When you try to do too much, you often end up doing more bad than good. If you push yourself too hard, rush head first into things, try to make quantity over quality, try to build that bloody table from IKEA without reading the instruction manual first, you're gonna get punished. Kingdom Come Deliverance is one of my favourite games, and in that game, you're really useless in combat. The only way to improve is to practice. Literally. You have to actually go to the practice arena and practice with your instructor. The more you do that, the better you become. We all want to head off into the open world and fight everything, but we aren't ready. The more time we put into this arena, the better we will be prepared. We all want to be ripped, but you can't just walk into a gym and lift the heaviest weight. You have to start at the bottom, then slowly work your way up. Just like training in Kingdom Come Deliverance, you have to train in real life. We all want the instant reward, but real life doesn't work like that. Repetition is the mother of mastery. That is what these games have taught me. So I have learned patience and perseverance from these games for the reasons I've just explained. This, to me, is a beautiful and unappreciated side of gaming. On that note, I have done 2 other videos here where I discuss the beauty within gaming in other ways, in case you're interested. But that being said, I would not be here making this video right now if I hadn't played those games. They toughened me up, they taught me to never give up, and I know for a fact I'm not the only person. I hope that this video has explained how and why these games teach these traits, and I hope it also explained why these games are so successful. From being considered a joke within the gaming industry, now Miyazaki is considered a prophet. People look at him as the trendsetter, and he changed gaming forever. There are lessons to take from that too. Remember, nobody believed in him, and they urged him to conform to the norm. Don't be creative, do what we know works, don't do something unique, do the same as everyone else. But he didn't, and thank God for that. So if you have any ideas, something different, don't give up on your dreams. Don't let others force you to conform to the norm. As Kanye West says, name one genius that ain't crazy. And whatever you want to do in life, you can take example from these games. No matter how many times you get kicked down, and you will, just keep getting back up. Keep going and eventually you'll get there. Patience and perseverance. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you guys want to buy my new motivational speaking courses, I'll have them up soon. And if you want to buy my cryptocurrency, that is also an option I'm working on. I'm just kidding. But what do you guys think? Do you think I got a little cringy in this video? Do you have any video game stories you can share like this that inspired you? And do you believe lessons can be taken from video games? If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out.